porque acá en estas cordilleras dice que hay oro. Por eso a nosotros nos quieren sacar de nuestra tierra.
Yanacocha vino y dijo que este terreno le pertenecía a Yanacocha, que lo cual ya no me pertenecía a mí, nosotros que éramos los dueños. Destruyeron todas las chozas que vivíamos, que dormíamos, que cocinábamos, lo quemaron. Nuestra laguna azul, los ingenieros lo van a secar y lo van a conservar para un botadero. Si Conga queda acá, va a destruir la tierra, los cerros, las aguas, las lagunas.
Yo no tengo miedo al poder de las empresas. Seguiré luchando.
Porque acá en estas cordilleras dice que hay oro. Por eso a nosotros nos quieren sacar de nuestra tierra.
Yanacocha vino y dijo que este terreno le pertenecía a Yanacocha, que lo cual ya no me pertenecía a mí, nosotros que éramos los dueños. Destruyeron todas las chozas que vivíamos, que dormíamos, que cocinábamos, lo quemaron. Nuestra laguna azul, los ingenieros lo van a secar y lo van a conservar para un botadero. Si Conga queda acá, va a destruir la tierra, los cerros, las aguas, las lagunas.
Yo no tengo miedo al poder de las empresas. Seguiré luchando.
Can you look at the screen? This will play, no? Hello. I just wanted to know whether you can look at this video.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay. I can play it, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we had already played it.
Okay. So I will close it then.
Sure, ma'am.
So where does it come? How do I join it? all right. So on the basis of this, can I take any questions or are there any suggestions? Am I
Ma'am,
audible?
there are comments in the chat box.
Yes, there is one comment in the chat box, right? Is a caste system killing the strength of the society and whether self-help groups can do something in this, right? So you would find that caste as well as, like other systems of differentiation is a social reality which talks about differentiating among people. So, in what particular context you want to discuss the caste system? The self-help groups are definitely useful, but the question is not very complete in itself. So, can you further elaborate on it? So, can you please further elaborate on this question?
Mahindra, if you wish to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll enable your mic.
Yes, this is an interesting question. What could be the alternative modes of media when we think about global solidarities, since gendered AI also affect major media platforms? Now, you will find that we do not know what is going to be the shape of AI. Now, we find that we have chatbots, and it is already becoming difficult for us teachers to assess whether the type of assignments our students are submitting are written originally or with the help of the AI. So, in this direction, right now, it is very difficult to say what would be the shape of things to come. Now, I would say that the media responsibility and to learn to present oneself on media in a proper light should also be learnt in today's world. Media has become a permanent reality. We are 24/7 online nowadays. So you would find that media footprints are also permanent. And nowadays, it is also related with our job opportunities if we are talking about students and research scholars, because in whatever field you go, your social media platforms are available to the people, the HR people, the interviewer also. So when we talk about alternative modes of media, we cannot really say what shape would it take. 20 years back, we could not understand what would be the impact of social media and would it become such a sudden global reality nowadays. Now, you would find that, okay, I'll come back to the next question presently. Now, if you want to learn what is the impact of media on our psyche, I would say that the best critic I have read about this field is Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan has predicted that there would be a stage when our consciousness would be outside us and the consciousness would be controlled by media. Are we ready for this phenomena or not? So there are two things. First is the alternative modes of media. The second is accountability. But again, when we talk about media accountability, we also cannot take in isolation because media is also controlled by certain forces. Technology enables us to use a media. The same media can be used to generate the stereotypes and can be used to resist these stereotypes. So, in what direction we want to use it is on us. So, AI and the impact of technology on us enhances the sense of responsibility of an individual. So, is this answer satisfactory? Should I add something more to it? Pariti? Okay, so now we have a question by Srijita. So this video and what we will discuss today has this possession and desire for the land. Do we not see it since the times of colonialism? The video is, if not just history, repeating itself as it happened with Australian and New Zealand Aboriginals and Maori. Yes. So you would find that this desire for the land is not only colonial, not only a product of colonialism. In the pre-colonial era also, we have this desire for land. Land is a particular type of possession which is very, visible to everybody. And when we talk about the power dynamics, then we find that it is compulsorily there. Particularly when you read Marxist philosophy, you would find that it was this possession of land and resources with which the industrial concept started. Now, you would find that the possession of land, grabbing the land, using it for certain purposes, has also been intricately used by different people in their own ways. Colonial empires have used it. The neo-colonial powers are also using it. And you are very right. This is what has happened in every country, including our own country, where land was used in a devastating manner by the colonial powers. So you would find that whenever we talk about the individual possession as land, which is necessary for the livelihood, but when we find that it is being taken away suddenly, we do not know what is the perceptions behind it always. Sometimes we find that we find the echo everywhere. For example, many of you would be familiar with the figure of Medha Patkar, right? So you would find that Bahuguna ji, who had opposed the dams, Sundarlal Bahuguna, who had opposed the construction of major dams. On the other hand, we find that the people talk about development. So where does it all end? Now, as in academic debate, it is comfortable for us to say that history repeats itself. It does. Because when we do not learn the lessons of the history, we do not learn how to balance things in a proper manner, how to be sensitive towards the needs of others. You would find that these type of activities would continue. Now, the feminist perspectives from the global north and global south differ in their approaches to structural violence and violence against women. Are they different? Are they not? Now, there can be a sociological answer to it, and there can be an answer based on literary criticism. When we look at literary criticism, we find that they are not very different. No. The feminist perspectives, academically speaking, from the perspective of literary criticism, they are the same. However, we find that the sociological responses to these violence in global north and global south are different. Women suffer everywhere. Now let me give you one more example. When we look at the gender hierarchy, which gender has the supreme place in the world? Well, of course, which gender holds the second position? Which gender holds the second position? Women. Why do I look at this question marks, Rijita? You're not sure about the answer? Please raise your hand and speak out. You're questioning yourself, but why? What is the reason of this self-questioning? In feminist theory, all of us are familiar with the work of Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex, The Secondary Sex. Published in 1959, we find that Simone de Beauvoir has forever fixed it in our imagination that we are, as women, the secondary sex, right? Nobody has questioned the priority of men, but let me tell you that now, as a part of sociological reality, women are not necessarily the secondary placeholders. There are societies in which the second place has already been given to the people with alternate sexual preferences. In countries like Denmark, in Netherlands, feminists are fighting against this idea that there has been a lot of emphasis on LGBTQ plus rights, positioning and preferences of them, but at the same time, the equality which was promised to women by the feminist movement has not been given. So we find that this is a strange resistance which is going on within feminism now in very advanced societies because they are not satisfied with this turn that without giving the equal rights and equal opportunities to women, people have already started the consideration of LGBTQ plus people. I am not against any gender, but this is a sociological reality. So when you question yourself, you are very right, Sujita. You're very right that when you question the place of women in the society, in a gender back order, so to say. So the next question is by Athira. Considering that transnational feminism is a movement based on solidarity, how would we recognize the line between speaking with marginalized people versus speaking for them, considering that some voices are louder than others? Now, as students of literature, like those of you who are from the literature background, would be familiar with W.H. Auden. You are, right? The famous 20th century poet. Okay, W.H. Auden is known for his poetry. Unfortunately, he died at a very young age, but he was very active in the communist movement. He belonged to the proletariat section of the society and he was an established communist figure. At that time, in the British Communist Party, he also had a friend who was from the privileged class, right? Britain is known for its class divisions. So, Auden always used to make fun of his friend and never accepted his friend as a true communist. So, one day they had a fight again about this issue or the friend said that I have the same policies, I have the same preferences, I contribute to the same level as you do, and still you think that you are a better communist than me. Adam simply smiled and said, I am of the people, you are for the people, right? So you would find that I have realized, and I'm not talking about any academic theoretical structure. Academically speaking, we cannot differentiate whether you belong to the marginalized people and have a better right to speak for them. No. But the difference between of the people and for the people would remain. And that is why we find that the difficulties and travails of a woman's life are better understood often by women themselves. And a person who suffers more is louder, is louder. Now, this answer is not satisfactory to all. It cannot be satisfactory to all. So, what are your academic responses to it? Was Auden correct in this statement? So, critically, I would say that all of us have a right to raise voice against any exploitation if we are human beings. But that is a personal feeling. Critically speaking, as an academician, I would say that nobody has a better right to speak for or against the people, and it is the empathetic understanding of the people about a particular issue. Also, it does not mean that if you belong to a particular section of the society or a particular gender, then you better understand that. That is also not true. But then let us say that whosoever understands that, okay, should be able to write it. So does it make sense to bring in the idea of epistemic privilege here? Does it not? Why do you have this question, Priyadarshini? Why do we have this question? What makes a trouble about it? Why do you feel that the idea of epistemic privilege is not necessarily needed here? When we talk about activism, we find that there are so many issues which are interconnectedly there, right? But at the same time, this is a very interesting question. This is a very intriguing question also. So I want to understand further your perspective, your thinking pattern before I answer to this question.
Good
Please,
evening, ma'am.
yes,
So, ma'am, I had this question because we've been talking about subaltern literature lately, and that's when we spoke about this concept. We say it is important to learn from them about their experiences. So, when we learn from them about their experience, they not only provide us about their personal experiences, they are also providing information to us about their history, the shared history. So, if we relate the same concept to this, doesn't it become important for women to speak about themselves and for themselves, not just women, um, any category for that matter?
yes, it is perfectly all right. You see, in order to understand what has been the background, the cultural, the social background of a people, the people first of all have to talk about it themselves, right? Sometimes it also happens that people themselves do not have the capability or the opportunity or the means to speak for themselves, and then it makes sense when other people try to present this history to others. But the idea of epistemic privilege is very much acceptable here also in the context of feminist movement also. Are you reading the subaltern as students of literature? Are you reading through the subaltern as students of literature? Okay. I have often referred to the AI, to the latest technological developments and how they impact our gender understanding, particularly in the context of social media platforms. So I wonder that there has been no question at all about it. No question or query about it? Only one question was there, which was more about ethical aspects of our responsibility in the context of AI and media. But do you think that when I say so much about the creation, the adoption, the imagination behind AI, it is very partial in favor of men and it is very much against women? Well, think about it. This is the area which is going to face you very soon. So, any other questions, not necessarily related with this lecture, but anything else related with gender, etc., kindly ask. Now, what do you want to suggest by shadow banning? What is your understanding of shadow banning? Is everybody aware of this term? How do you understand this particular term? Would you explain it for the benefit of other people also? Now, shadow banning, as AI and gender, all right, visibility of people who are marginalized, okay. So, first of all, let us talk about the shadow banning within social media platforms. So, shadow banning, as I understand, is the practice of blocking somebody fully, partially, permanently, right? It can be done by an individual, it can also be done by the platform authorities, right? So, from which perspective do you want me to discuss it? Now we find that in Facebook and in Twitter, new options are also being given in which we can also control who can view, like this control about who can view our information was already there, but in the followers also we can now control it. So you would find that in social media platforms more and more options are being given to the user. However, we find that the media platforms practice different types of policies when it comes to their own policy implementations. And that is why in every state you find that there are several number of cases. So you would find that pride one from its calendar. Okay. So Google is ultimately what? Google is a company. The companies are run for profit. The profit is to be gained by focusing on those sections of the society which has the most or the best paying capacity. And that is why we find that often media campaigns are able to portray those stereotypes which favor the conventional gender roles. Okay, so you would find that the visibility, this shadow banning is very much there. As an individual, we can try to control it, but when it is done by the media platforms, then perhaps you would find that it cannot be controlled by us. All of us have faced it sometime or the other. Even the national leaders have sometimes, faced it. Originally, it suggested that it has to be applied to a deceptive account suspension or deceptive web forums, but now we find that it is used more as a technique to suppress a voice of different. So when we talk about AI and gender, I don't know whether you are satisfied with my answer on shadow banning because technology is controlled. Living in India, you cannot access the data which is controlled by EU. I'm sorry that we have a gust from EU, right? But still it is very true. In India, I cannot access the data which is owned by the EU. So you will find that these type of database differentiation have resulted into a different type of imperialism. Now, when we talk about AI and gender, one more idea I would add to my answer to shadow banning. Now, you will find that in every election in every country, we find that shadow banning has become a very, very, very loud presence. Okay, it is done by design, and we find that it is always governed by certain motive. But who finalizes these motives depends on them. But shadow banning is a very sensitive issue. It is controlled by the respective companies, and different companies have the right to change their policies midway, as you have given this example of Google in your query. Now, when we talk about AI and gender, now AI is ultimately what? AI is programmed by a human being. All right, it is based on machine learning. AI is learns from the data which we provide to it. So we provide the data, we provide a particular system according to which it has to learn and it can be answerable. So if my data is correct, if my data has a bias, right, then the AI would also be biased. And therefore, we find that here we come to this issue of glass ceiling in the concept of gender studies. Now, you would be familiar with this idea of glass ceiling, the relatively less participation of women in STEM forces. So you would find that because of these reasons, because the AI creators are normally men, okay, perhaps they do not differentiate between and amongst the genders as a choice, but because it is very much a reality for them. Now, it is said that gender is a double-edged sword. It harms some, but it also, benefits others. So, a group who is already reaping the benefits of it does not even become sensitive to the discrimination unless and until of fair representation of the other sections are there. So the less representation of women conditions the preparation and selection of data in the programming. For example, many of you would be using different types of helps. AI help. Which AI helps do you use? Name some. Is that what are the names of some AI helps you can suggest? Gemini, okay, and ChatGPT board, okay, all right, okay. Then other programs also, DeepSeek, okay, I will not go to DeepSeek, in fact, Copilot, okay. Now, these programs, as well as, these AI helps, these modelings, you would find that often women are presented in supportive roles. When you ask an AI, and there have been experiments on it, so when you suggest that, there was an experiment which had basically provided photographs of American senators to an AI program. Now, the senators were sitting in their office chairs, and then there was a standard table and chair which was common to all the senators, and there was the national flag behind them. And the AI was asked to select adjectives for them. So you would find that the AI selected adjectives which showed authority and power in the context of male photographs, and in the context of women, it suggested beautiful hair design, dress, etc. So you will find that this AI has been trained on a data set which is already biased. So this bias we find in medical researches also, whereas in, for example, in there have been very limited research on particular types of cancers which are found in women only. For example, the breast cancer. So you would find that the data on this particular type of cancer is very less. And often we find the data which has been found on the basis of other cancer patients who are largely male is often used to provide medicines to women cancer patients. So you will find that the way in which the robots are suggested to it, the robotic helps are given to us. For example, you would find that the chatbots, which are often used by various service platforms, give you the voice of a woman, right? The voice of a woman, this is trained, this is servile, this is educated, and a young woman's voice. So I had conducted a project, in fact it is still going on, in which we want to use the voice of an authoritative male in using the same words as a response for different types of tasks. And we want to assess the brain functioning of the user in that case. So you will find that when we talk of AI, then we cannot forget that AI is also governed only by human beings, right? In fact, there is a very interesting survey which I often talk about in my class. I've forgotten about it. That's about a robotics one. Uh, it was a research scholar who had conducted a survey in one of the British universities in the department of robotics. Right? There were only 11 or 12 students. All of them were men. So people who reached the PG stature in robotics are very intelligent people. Okay, we cannot question that. Their IQ level is very high. So the questions were asked about the type of model they would give, the type of physical model which they would create for a particular type of robot. So they suggested that if the robot has to go to the war front, etc., the figure would be that of a man. On the other hand, if it is going for the service sector, it has to be a woman. So you will find that the gender stereotypes normalize these things even in research fields. For example, we go to the space research. There is hardly any research for the specific needs of women space travelers. So that is why I say that gender is never proactive. Take up any field and you would find that this issue of gender crops up, which is often not heard of, which is not even cared for, not because people do not want to do it, but that they are immune to the existence of this problem because of the less representation of women in alternate genders. Any other question, comment? We have drifted away from the initial topic, but it is pretty interesting. So we are about to close the session. So if there are any last questions? All right. So if there are no further questions, what do the organizers suggest? As I had said earlier, I would be available for all these questions through mail. You can give reference to this Gyan course and ask any type of question. Yeah. How can we approach research in the areas of gender studies and Dalit studies if we do not belong to the marginalized communities yet hold interest in these areas? How do we approach the research so that we don't seem alienated from the topic or seem to take away space of expression from the marginalized communities? Okay, I trust that you are a person of literature or sociology or psychology. Okay, so what I had said yesterday is valid as an answer even today because the research gains certain has to be based on an objective perception of things. You have to remain objective, you have to retain objectivity and view the situation with certain empathy. So it should not make any difference to the capabilities of a researcher if you actually belong to that community or not. Okay, your sensitivity, your understanding, and at the same time, your objectivity as a researcher would definitely result into a very useful research. Now, it is unthinkable for me that anybody can say that you cannot undertake gender studies or Dalit studies for that matter. The gender impacts everyone. And what I had said about marginalized communities earlier, and I had cited Auden, that was just, sort of a way of suggesting things, a particular viewpoint. But say, as a researcher, it is our duty not to be swayed by any emotional appeal in whichever field we are working. The research has to be objective. If you are a sociologist, you have to work in the field and present the case in favor of whatever problem you are discussing. I hope, Ankita, that you are satisfied with this answer. Thank you. So all of you can access me for any type of questions whenever you want it, want any suggestion, any type of discussion. You have my official mail. Please send a query to it. And also, please give a reference to this GAN code so I can put you in a particular context. And you are very welcome to hold any type of dialogue whenever it is needed by you. It would be my pleasure to connect to you.